Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to say thank you to all of the new subscribers. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing. Hit that bell notification so that you can see every time I put out a new video. A major portion of you that watch my videos haven't subscribed yet, so why not? It's free. You can also find a PayPal link below if you want to give a one-time or give a monthly to support the channel. Anything, great or small, is appreciated. Now let's get into the video. What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me today in this live stream. So we're going a little bit earlier than we had scheduled. Today is a special guest for me. So you've probably heard me talk about me owning a media company, and that media company majority, probably about 80 to 90%, is a real estate company. So that means I do video, drone, photo, stuff like that. So the reason, and you probably have a similar story, the reason I even got into real estate, shooting the media for it, was my mother. And so at the time of recording this, it is the Monday after Mother's Day, and she started talking about a story that she used to share all the time when she used to do kids crusades. And I was like, you know what? That would be a great podcast episode. So there she is, ladies and gentlemen, my mother in the flesh. So now, as probably what you see on your screen or your phone or whatever, you see that it said she almost was killed, and then this happened. This is not clickbait. This is actually a part of her story. So welcome, Mother.
Thank you for having me. This is a first for me, so let's see how this goes.
So kind of tell us kind of a little bit of background. I guess you could start kind of at the beginning of kind of how this all started to take form in your life from, I guess, when you were a child.
It was.
A couple of years ago.
A few years ago. Well, I'll go back a little further, even to when I was born. I was given up for adoption by my biological mother, which I met later on in life, which is a totally different story. But I was adopted, and of course, they immediately told us as we began to grow up, that they didn't want to, me find out later or whatever. And
when you say we,
I had an adopted brother also.
She still does.
Still does. He was 4 years older than I was.
Okay.
So my adopted parents couldn't have children, so they chose to adopt. So at a young age, they immediately began to tell us because they didn't want us to find out from somewhere else, and all those things, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
So, and things were really great. We were in church. Both of my parents were teachers, Sunday school teachers at church. So things were good. We were at our early ages of our life brought up in church. And then I remember they decided to buy, my dad was a local truck driver for back then, used to be called Cotton Belt. So it was a local delivery service. They would bring in all the merchandise on the train, and then they would load it to the trucks, and they would then distribute it to all the local companies. He made good money. We had a fairly good living as a younger child. And then they decided to purchase it was called a curb market, little fruit stand type thing where they had their little store next to a monument factory, and all the guys would come over and they had sandwiches. They would make homemade sandwiches for them, and just that type of thing. And
so they would make food for them too, and they would buy it from them?
Yeah, like a little deli type thing. Yes, of course that was back in the 60s, so a deli thing wasn't very popular, but that was something they did.
You heard it right here first, ladies and gentlemen. The first food truck that ever existed, right here. Now, how old were you at this time? Can you remember?
6, 7, 8, somewhere in that ballpark.
It's pretty young.
Yes, I was. Because I remember at the age of 8, they had started making pretty good money at the little curb market thing. And my dad had started drinking. I don't know if it was the stress of the extra job, because he would have to get up early on Saturday mornings and drive from South Arkansas to Little Rock to pick up fruits and vegetables, and it became a big task. So in his mind, I'm thinking that maybe it was a stress reliever.
Yeah.
But things began to just deteriorate from that point and get worse and worse. The more money they made in the store, the more money he would drink. And I remember I was 8 years old. My dad took my brother and I to church one Sunday morning and let us out in the parking lot and handed us his and my mom's Sunday school literature and told us to take it to the pastor and tell them that they would not be back and this would be our last Sunday.
Like them or everybody in the family? It was her last Sunday.
It was our whole family. My dad said, we will not be going back. You take our literature and you tell the pastor that your mom and I will no longer be teaching Sunday school.
And about how old
8.
were you? You
I
were
remember very distinctly. I was 8 years old. So I had to walk to my pastor, my brother and I.
You had to have a big girl conversation.
I let him do most of the talking, but yes. He was older. He was 4 years older.
So you heard it. He was always wiser. He's always smarter. Cause
I don't know about
the
that.
older sibling always is. In my experience.
Not necessarily.
In my experience. So what was the reaction of the pastor when he gets literature from a kid saying my parents aren't coming back?
He was, I think he had a lot of wisdom. He didn't ask a lot of questions of us. He didn't want to put us in that position.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
And so he graciously took the material and told us okay and hugged us and told us that he hoped he would see us again soon. But we never went back. And at the age of 10, we had the opportunity, my dad had the opportunity to be transferred with the same company to another town. And my mom seemed to be of the opinion that if that actually happened, then we would all have a new lease on life and everything was just going to be hunky-dory and he was going to stop drinking, start type thing. So they went for it. And it did help for a while. We moved when I was 10. He did transfer with the same company, new school, new everything. I was starting the 4th grade when we changed schools.
Now, if she's worried about that kind of stuff, does that mean that he might have already had a reputation in the community for the way he was he acting out, behaving any different, or was it just like a weekend thing? Or
he would only do it on weekends. He didn't want to lose his job through the week, so he would stop at the liquor store on a Friday coming home from work, and he would start drinking. But by Sunday night, he would sober up so he could go back to work on Monday.
That takes a lot of self-control to do that.
It was a weird thing, but he was the type of person, some people, when they drink, they get very lethargic or they sleep or they get happy or whatever. He, unfortunately, was not that type. It brought out the demon in him. He turned into a monster. When the alcohol hit his system, it totally changed his whole personality, just 180 degrees from what he normally was.
And was he drinking hard liquor or just beer or kind of a mix, or do you even know?
A mix of whatever. He would sometimes on Friday night, he would leave home and not come back till Sunday night so he could go back to work on Monday. He would go out and stay out at the bars and leave us at home with Mom. And, you know, there were a few times that I got in the car with Mom and we chased him down to see where he was, which I won't go into those things. But
which is where she got her detective skills from today. She started at a very young age.
It probably didn't hurt. I remember one occasion before we moved, I was still young, and for whatever reason, I don't remember why, but I was left at home with Dad on a Saturday. Mom was doing something at the store, and he was drinking, and I was on a medication. I had been sick, and the doctor had given me pills. Well, I struggled to get pills down. And he took a belt and he beat me. I have a couple of places on my legs still where I have scars where he busted me open with a belt trying to make me take the pills. And
Did it help?
No. On Monday, my mom got a hold of the pharmacist and they were able to get me a liquid form, but I could not get them down. And I'm almost 64 years old and I still struggle to take a pill. I take them one by one, and some days it's just really, really hard to even get one down at a time, no matter if it's a vitamin, no matter what it is, because I guess that's still, after all of these years, that's still in my mind. And for years, I would have to smush it up and put it in something, orange juice or something to drink it because I just could not get it down.
Sometimes I can take a handful and like do a big gulp and get it. But Tristan, like our 15-year-old, I got him some vitamins that's supposed to help him grow. He thinks he's going to be 6'4" or whatever. The chances aren't very good for that. But it was pill form, and they're still sitting in the cabinet. He said, I can't do. Now, he takes his medicine, for ADHD every day, every morning. Never has an issue with that. But anything beyond that, he thinks he can't do it. So it's just, they're sitting in the cabinet. And he wants gummies or something he can chew up or something like that. But
well, I can sympathize with that for a little bit different reason. But still, it's still... After all these years, it's still in my head. And, every day I see the scars on my leg where he beat me because I couldn't swallow a pill.
So in the tracking of the years, that was just a normal day. He wasn't drunk when he beat you for...
No, that wasn't a weekend. So he was drinking.
I was drinking.
He wasn't totally out of it because Mom had left me at home with him. But he was still drinking that day, or he never would have done that. Growing up, yes, we got spankings. Did they beat us when he was sober? No. Did I get beat when he was drunk? Absolutely. More times than I could remember, yes.
So what was the contrast and comparison between when he would drink and when he wouldn't?
A lot. I remember one time, I don't remember what my brother did, but somehow or another I got involved in it too. So he was gonna spank both of us. And so he made us go in the living room and get on our knees and lean over the couch. Well, of course, my brother got his spanking first. And I was, please, Daddy, stop, don't hit him.
Tristan does that same thing.
And by the time he got to me, he was laughing so hard, he had mercy on me. And then I didn't do it for that reason, but it worked,
Hey, whatever works.
But I mean, we got spankings as normal kids back in the 60s, because that's the era that I grew up in. But definitely not beatings.
Yeah, only when he was drinking.
Yes.
Now, when you talk about the beatings and the anger and was there a difference in the, for lack of a better phrasing, outpouring of wrath when he was drunk between you and your brother? Did he get him more, or was he old enough to be gone and there wasn't?
He was gone a lot. David, my brother, was in Boy Scouts and things, so they had overnight trips and they did all these things. And for years before my dad started drinking, he was a coach of a little boys baseball team. And, so he would take us down with him to the coach. I got to go to the boys club and jump on the trampoline because it was at the boys club where he coached and all of those things were really great. We had a good life until the alcohol came in.
But you never found out why?
No.
Just assuming. I mean, being little kids, you don't really know your parents' business, but...
I know he was ex-military, which he never really talked about a lot.
Yeah.
He was in the Army.
That seems to be a big stressor and a common thread. People get out of the military, they start doing substance abuse because of what they had to do, what they had to see, things like that.
I'm sure that played a role in it. He never talked a lot about his childhood growing up. Because they were older when they adopted us. My grandparents were already, on my dad's side, were already deceased. Well, I say deceased. I think my grandmother died when I was 3 or 4 years old, so I never really got to know her or whatever. But that was a side of his life he never really talked about. But I do know that he had a couple of brothers who, when they drank, it was the exact same thing for them. They turned into monsters. So I don't know if it was a chemistry makeup. I don't know what causes a person to be the comedian that everybody thinks is hilarious, or just one that goes down and just passes out as compared to one that turns into the monster. I don't know what it is that makes that difference. I don't know if it's a body chemistry thing. I don't know if it's a DNA thing. I don't know what causes that difference in the way it affects them.
Well, when I got in trouble the first time, came from Orlando, came back to here, and I had to go to that counselor all the time. And Tyler, he described it as like money. Whoever you are, money will magnify it. So when you get money and you're a cheat or a liar or whatever, well, now you can do more of that and get away with it. You can afford, expensive lawyers, things like that. And he described it as the same as alcohol, being like who you are. Even though you may suppress it when you're sober, it brings down those barriers and makes you be who you really are. But the way you describe him when he wasn't drunk.
And most people who knew him had no earthly idea that he was like that, because he was at work, he was the prankster. He used to tell a story about a guy that they had an order of coffins coming in. So they were loading the trucks. The coffins, they got them unloaded off the train, and the next day they were going to distribute them. Mm-hmm. And they got one of the guys in the, I don't know, the little building there to play dead in a coffin, and sent one of the newer guys over to pick it up. Mm-mm. And then the guy started scratching on the inside. And they said this guy, he was so scared that he took off running down the train tracks. And they didn't see him for a couple of weeks until he finally came back to pick up his check because he was done. He wouldn't even come back to work. A couple of weeks. He wouldn't even come back to the train station to pick up his check or tell them anything until he finally came back a couple of weeks and said, I'm done. Just give me my paycheck. I'm out of here.
Wow.
A little joke that went a little further than what they thought it would.
I wouldn't have quit a job for it, though. I mean, somebody had to tell him it was. Did they ever tell him it was fake?
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
he did.
okay.
He had to know. I mean, but they were always playing pranks. So he was a prankster as well, too. But it was just really odd, and it still boggles my mind a little bit how that personality would change.
Yeah.
Like that.
I don't know. I haven't ever. I wasn't that way, so I was the one that would get drunk, and I would be the peacemaker. Like, I would calm down people that would get angry, get mad at each other drunk, and I would be the one in the middle of them in their face telling them to calm down because it was stupid they were getting mad. I would have like such a peacemaker mind when I was out of my mind. It was ridiculous. I'd get high, I'd get drunk all at the same time, and I'd talk to people about how God existed. People would tell me they didn't. I said, oh, yeah, he does. And I'd tell them stories. I'd sit there and preach to them. I'd calm them down. And then now I do that today sober. So,
well, I know when you were in Orlando and had the beard down to here and the hair a lot longer than mine.
I was really cool, by the way.
You know, they nicknamed you Jesus, so that's probably why.
And I did not choose that. That was them. I didn't. That's not a sacrilegious thing on my part or blasphemy. I did not choose that. Like that, people ask me, well, how do we add you on? Because then, you know, Facebook and MySpace was a big thing. Mm-hmm. Well, how do we find you? Jesus? And I'm like, that's not my name. Bunch of dummies. But anyway, so moving on with the story.
Well, even before Dad took the transfer and we moved and all, I had I had a cousin that was on the police force. One Sunday night, police cars pulled up in our driveway, and it was my cousin. They had been called to a bar fight. And guess who was involved in it? With my dad.
Yeah.
And these guys had beat him to a pulp. If you did not know who it was, you could not recognize him in the face. I mean, they beat him. He was off work 2 weeks recovering at home in the back bedroom that we were not allowed to go into.
Wow.
Because they had beat him to a pulp. And then when we recovered on weekends, he would go out and stalk them because he was going to get them back. And my cousin kept saying, Uncle Buck, they'll kill you. They'll kill you. And so it was time to move.
What was his real name?
Paul.
I could not remember.
Paul Jones.
Because Buck and Jackie, that wasn't anywhere in their names, was it?
No. Mom's name was Alma Delois.
I know Alma, yeah.
And then his was Paul Jones. Jones was his middle name, and they named him that after the doctor that delivered him. I do know that.
Okay.
But he just never really talked about his growing up years.
So now y'all moved.
Yes.
And life was good for a little bit.
Life was good for a little bit.
What comes next? What started happening? Did it started slowly tapering and being back the way it was?
He started drinking a little bit. Is he
going out with friends, or is he just going by himself?
No, he didn't go out with friends at all. No, which was another weird thing. It was just, I was helping Mom do laundry one day, and I found a bottle in a brown bag in the laundry basket. And I thought, oh no, because it was half gone.
Yeah.
And I thought, here we go again. And then I found some more through the house.
In the laundry basket?
Yeah, it was all down. He was hiding it.
Yeah.
And then the house we bought had a pond. And so I would go with him out on the pond in the boat to fish. And in the little cooler he would make for us, he'd pull out this brown bag. And I guess he thought I was too dumb to know what was in the brown bag. You know, and so it would just continue, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And then it started all over again. Was
it only on the weekends he was doing all this stuff still? Okay.
Still only on the weekends.
He valued that job.
He might take a drink or two. I'm assuming he probably did, but not enough to get to that drunk point through the week. I mean, back at that time, his job paid him very well, so he didn't want to lose that, I'm sure.
Yeah. So what's next? He starts drinking again. It starts slowly fading and getting bad again.
We still at that time were not in church. We had started going, and then he kind of pulled out me and my brother kept going. They did allow us to keep going. The church that we went to was just a mile from the house. So they did allow us to keep going. People would come pick us up or whatever. Matter of fact, there was an older lady in the church who stopped by the house one day and saw my brother and I outside and asked my mom if they could start picking us up for church. And they allowed them to do that. So we did. But it just gradually got worse and worse and worse until he was back to where he was before, if not worse.
Now, in this time where all this is happening, where is God in the house anywhere? Is like your mom one of those who just is silently praying or reading or anything like that? Or does she just push it all away too? Or do you even remember?
I don't remember her doing any of those things. I do remember as a kid when there would be a big blow up, which was some weekends he would just drink and just not come home. Other weekends he would be drinking, he would be there, and there would be a massive explosion in the house. On the weekends that there were massive explosions and then he would leave, she would go and lock herself in a bedroom, and I would sit outside that bedroom door and cry and beg her to let me in, and she wouldn't even answer me.
Really?
But the way that she would get back with him was she would go in that room and she would smoke. That was her getting back with him, getting back at him.
Smoke cigarettes?
Yes. That was the only time she ever smoked.
That's
ever.
Weird.
I thought so too, but I guess that was her way of
rebelling?
Yes.
But staying inside the house?
Yeah.
Your mom's smoking, she's rebelling. That reminds me so much. I mean, I'm not condoning smoking, but that reminds me of Jessie when she was in high school. She would sneak in the bathroom at school and she would put on makeup, and that was her rebellion. Like that, that's kind of, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I guess if that's the way she felt that she was getting some sort of rebellion. But
I think everybody goes through a little bit of that. For some, it's more intense, and for others, it's kind of light. So, you know.
Yeah, and then when we get older, we call it a midlife crisis, and it's okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what's next? Like, she's doing that, you're knocking, she's not answering. How are you coping with all this?
I really wish back in those days that there had been school counselors, or something like that, to have somebody, a safe place to go talk to. And I also wish, looking back, and I've thought this millions of times growing up, that once a child is adopted, why doesn't the state or the adoption agency ever follow up with those kids to make sure that they're in a good environment instead of just letting it go? And because everybody who adopts a child does not turn out to be a good parent.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that's same thing true with people who have biological children. Not everybody who has a child, their kid's life doesn't turn out to be.
Yeah.
There needs to be some accountability system somewhere along the way, and I think they've improved those things through the years. And now most schools have counselors or safe places where kids can go talk and things.
Yeah.
But during those times, there just wasn't. I did have one friend in high school who her dad drank a lot, and so she and I confided a lot in each other. But I was never allowed to go on school trips. I was a good student. I was afraid not to be a good student.
Yeah.
You did not want to cross my dad. You didn't want him to give him a reason. I spent my whole teenage years growing up trying to do everything right, not to ever get in trouble, to make him mad at me.
So he would remember what you did during the week and then hash it out on the weekend when he was drunk?
Yeah.
That kind of, okay.
Pretty much.
So he didn't handle it then, he was fine then, but come the weekend, it would just come to the surface. And
when I was about 12 or 13, I got to the point that on Friday afternoon, when I was waiting for Dad to come home from work, I would sit in the corner in my bedroom on the floor and just shake, not knowing what was going to happen by the time he got home. My mom was very careful on Friday afternoon to make sure that if she did mashed potatoes, make sure they didn't have a lump in them or whatever, because we would be sitting at the table having dinner and something in the dinner wasn't right or whatever. He would just take the table and turn the whole thing upside down, and food would just go everywhere and us sitting there. And then he would just go off into a rage and start throwing things. There wasn't a wall in our house that didn't have a hole in it somewhere from something he had thrown or a fist he had put through there. We didn't own a stick of furniture that had been broken and fixed multiple dozens of times. He just wreaked havoc on the house, and he would beat my mom, and he would tell me that I had to stand there and watch. And if if I didn't, then if I tried to stop him or grab him or whatever, he would throw me across the room and said, if you don't stop, you're next. And I knew exactly, he meant exactly what he was saying. Now, my brother, who was 4 years older, he was always on a camping trip. He got to get a job. As soon as he turned 15, 16 years old, I never got to do any of those things. I was always kept right there under his thumb. My brother was the state beta club president. He went to all the beta club conventions. I was never allowed to go to any of those. I couldn't go to cheerleader camp. I couldn't do all the other things that...
What was the reason you couldn't do any of that?
I never understood that. And I don't know if my mom didn't want me to because I kept trying to be the buffer between the two. Or I don't know if he was afraid I was going to get in trouble and do something wrong while I was gone. I never had a logical explanation of why I couldn't. My brother could do anything under the sun. I was just not allowed to do anything. And I will admit that my brother did some really stupid things on some of these trips while he was gone.
Yeah.
And, I tried to reason that in my head. That was why I wasn't allowed to, is because he was an idiot. But I'm sure that wasn't always the truth either.
Yeah.
I was the girl. They wanted me right there. He wanted to know exactly what I was doing. And my mom didn't want me to be gone because she was afraid what would happen to her if I wasn't there. Because, I mean, there was one night that he got mad about something after turning the table upside down or, whatever. And he got the pistol out of the cabinet, and he grabbed her around the neck, and he held the gun to her head and said, I'm fixing to blow your mom's brains out. Of course, I went ballistic, screaming and crying and all. And she was telling him, go ahead, please, go ahead. And I'm like, no.
It's like a scene from a movie.
It was horrid. As a kid.
How old were you at this time? Do you remember?
Maybe 12, 13, 14. It happened several times. So, 12, 13, 14 in those years. But watching that and really thinking and knowing that he's capable and he probably would, and she's begging him to do it, it puts a lasting impact on your life that you just cannot get out of your head.
So what was okay, so you're in the middle of this. You're screaming, don't do it. He's saying he's going to. What de-escalated the situation where he wouldn't every time? Or he just wore himself out?
I really don't know. I don't know if he was just all bluffing to see what she would do, or if it finally, he couldn't do it because I was standing there watching and begging and screaming him not to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
I have so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
There's so many things I don't have answers to.
And the reason she don't have these answers, I guess you had years to maybe, if things are good, you don't want to ask questions that would cause issues, but he's passed on now. Both of them have now. So can't really have those questions answered. But so this was just an every weekend scenario.
Pretty much. Yep.
Now you told me one story, and I don't know how old you were, but you had said that you were running out of the house with your mom. And
I was 14.
Oh, you remember this one? Exactly.
I remember this one. Yes. It was on a Friday evening. He was already pretty well drunk by the time he got home. He never got stopped for DUI because he started drinking by the time he left town. Had a 15-minute drive home. But that night, something at the table was said, done. Something wasn't right. I don't remember what caused it. But again, he turned the table upside down and all our dinner went flying across the room. And then he gets up and starts breaking furniture, throwing things, throwing glasses, throwing everything. And
their bill for stuff had to be pretty high if he kept breaking everything.
He did break a lot of stuff. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of damage just to the house, with fists through the walls and broken glass and all those things.
So was the house just in shambles all the time, or was it repaired every single week, or how did that?
The holes in the walls were not repaired. He and my mom would fix some of the furniture and things, or we just have broken stuff. But that night he seemed, for whatever reason, to be a little more intense than what he normally was. And he had got the shotgun. And
now, before he went and got the shotgun, and I'm assuming the shotgun was in the house somewhere.
Mm-hmm. He always kept guns loaded.
What was the path from getting out of his truck to the shotgun? Was he already, like, he just came in and went straight for it?
No, we had dinner.
Okay, so there was some things in between. It wasn't just...
He turned the dinner table upside down and, started throwing things and beating on her and slapping me around and all these things. But it just kept getting more intense. He was just... in a rage like I had never seen him in at that point. And then he went and got the shotgun, which I had not ever seen him do up to then. And so he started hollering, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill both of you." And so my mom and I ran out the front door. We had the pond down behind the house, but there was a road that went from around the front of the house down to the pond. And so Mom and I, in the dark, ran out the front door, found the road, and was running down the road toward the pond to get away from him. And I remember as a 14-year-old looking back over my shoulder, and I could see fire flying out of the gun as he was shooting it toward us, hollering, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." And we didn't stop running.
Where'd y'all end up?
We stayed down at the pond for a long time, and we could hear him tearing up everything in the house.
Oh, in the house. So he stayed in the house. He didn't come looking.
He stayed in the house. Thank God he stayed in the house. But we were hiding in the woods, and we stayed down there for hours until we could hear things calm down at the house. And I figured he probably passed out. So we snuck across the road and had to come up on the other side of the road in the dark. We didn't have a flashlight. We didn't have anything. And we were able to come up the road, across the road, and go down another little road to one of our friends' house, one of my mom's friend's house. And they let us stay in their back bedroom. They put up sheets and stuff on the windows, so if he came looking for us, he couldn't see in the windows if he came there.
So the neighbors now were aware, or they had been aware for a while?
This neighbor had been aware for a while because Mom had shared a couple of stories with them.
Yeah.
But like I said, they kept us in their back bedroom all weekend. And that's where we stayed, in their back bedroom.
Until you knew it was safe to go back?
We went back home Sunday night.
While he was there?
He had left sometime Saturday. I don't know where he went. Oh. But by the time he came back, he was sober and never said anything about it. It was like it didn't even, in his mind, it didn't even happen.
After he does all this stuff, did he ever apologize or say, "I'm sorry," or was it always like it never happened?
It was always like it never happened. He never, ever, in my whole life, ever apologized for any of that.
I wonder if he was blacking out and wasn't aware. You think there'd be some sort of awareness, but all you hear people getting angry.
All the signs are there. I mean, you've got everything torn up, everything broken, everything, you would think that he would think, "Oh, did I do this?"
Something happened, yeah. That's weird.
It was. There were many, many Christmases that I spent opening my presents by myself as a kid. What few I got, which was fine. I mean, it was years ago. And that was something that I decided right then that my family would never be that way. We would do Christmas together no matter what. And that's why it was always so important for me that you guys that we're all there together in front of the tree, and we all do this together and have all the Christmas things and all those memories of birthday parties. I never had a birthday party. All those things. I wanted you guys to have all those things that I didn't have. So that's why all those things were always important to me. And y'all were like, I don't care. I did care. That was important to me, that you had those experiences.
Faith and Failures Podcast.